The Galactic Empire stood as an eternal monument to dominance. Its vast fleets patrolled the edges of every known system, its military power so great that no force dared challenge it for centuries. The Emperor's word was law, and his legions marched across the stars, conquering world after world, expanding their reach into the deepest corners of the galaxy. The citizens of the Empire lived in fear and awe of the Emperor's rule, for it was said no one had ever risen against it and survived. Entire civilizations were crushed under the weight of its might. Any attempt at rebellion swiftly erased by the Empire's iron fist. The vastness of the Empire's reach was unimaginable. Entire star systems were swallowed up and placed under its control. Nothing was beyond its grasp. Yet even with this power, a new whisper began to spread in the outermost regions of the galaxy, an unfamiliar noise, the kind that spoke of a force that had never been seen before. The few who dared to mention it spoke with both fear and wonder of ships unlike any the Empire had ever encountered. Sleek and deadly, their speed was said to defy understanding, and their firepower unimaginable. This new force was said to come from beyond the Empire's grasp, a place where no scout or soldier had ventured before. Rumors of these mysterious ships began to spread through Imperial military channels. Some dismissed it as nothing more than the ramblings of unhinged minds. Others began to wonder if there was truth to it. But whatever they were, the Emperor cared little for their existence. His empire was eternal. He was the master of the galaxy, and no one could stand against his will. Yet the whispers began to grow louder and louder. They spoke of humans, beings from a distant corner of the universe, beings who did not fear the Empire. They spoke of a fleet of warships carrying weapons that could tear apart the Empire's finest ships with ease. These ships were unlike anything the Empire had ever seen. They moved in ways that defied conventional tactics, and with such precision that not a single countermeasure seemed to work. When a new report arrived detailing the destruction of a heavily fortified Imperial outpost near the galactic rim, the Emperor's advisors dismissed it as a fluke. No real threat, just a minor skirmish at the edges of the galaxy. But in secret, the Emperor's military leaders began to grow uneasy. They called for a full investigation into these mysterious invaders. Yet even as they did so, more reports flooded in from all corners of the Empire. The mysterious warships had attacked Imperial patrols near uncharted regions. With pinpoint accuracy, fleets of ships vanished without a trace. The once proud Empire began to feel a tremor of doubt, a small flicker of uncertainty in the hearts of its commanders and generals. But they still refused to believe that anything could stand against the might of the Empire. Surely this was just another rebel group or a pirate faction seeking to make a name for themselves. And then, without warning, the first ship appeared out of the blackness of space, cutting through the stars at a speed no ship should have been able to reach. The vessel emerged from the dark expanse and moved toward an Imperial star system, leaving nothing in its wake. No distress calls, no transmissions, just the cold silence of an enemy that didn't care for diplomacy, only war. And the Emperor's unshakable confidence began to crack. The rumors of the mysterious fleet only grew stronger with time, spreading like wildfire across the Empire's outer territories. At first, they were dismissed as myths, as fanciful stories shared by the downtrodden and those living on the fringes of the Empire. But as reports continued to trickle in from distant planets and outposts, the tales began to carry a weight of truth. People spoke of ships that moved faster than any technology the Empire had ever encountered, vessels that seemed to slip through the very fabric of space itself. Some claimed the ships appeared out of nowhere, emerging from the black void between stars, only to disappear again before anyone could get a clear look. The descriptions were inconsistent, but they all painted the same picture: something where someone was coming, and it wasn't the Empire. The rebels who had long fought the Empire saw the rumors as more than just stories. To them, the whispers were a beacon of hope, a symbol that there might be someone out there capable of defeating the Empire. These rebels, scattered across the galaxy, had long been crushed beneath the Empire's boot. Their once great resistance movements had been shattered, their leaders hunted down, their homeworlds destroyed. Yet in these whispers, they found a spark. They began to unite once again, connecting in secret, exchanging messages encoded in every known language and cipher. And in the midst of their secret meetings, they dared to dream. The humans, they called them. A new species, unknown to the Empire, but rumored to be a force unlike anything the galaxy had seen. They were said to be fierce, driven by a willpower and determination that made them unstoppable. The rebels who heard of them began to believe that this human fleet was the key to toppling the Empire's reign. They believed that these humans, who had no fear of the Empire, could turn the tide of the war and shatter the Emperor's stranglehold on the galaxy. As the whispers spread, so did the tales of their capabilities. The human fleet was said to be small in number but devastatingly powerful. Unlike the Empire's massive warships that relied on overwhelming firepower and sheer numbers, the humans were described as operating with incredible precision, striking quickly and retreating before the Empire could even respond. The fleet was not bound by the rigid structure of the Empire's tactics. They were unpredictable, adapting and learning faster than any enemy the Empire had faced. Each battle they fought seemed to end with an unexpected outcome, and each victory fueled the belief that the Empire's time was coming to an end. However, many within the Empire refused to entertain these ideas. They dismissed the human fleet as a minor nuisance, an insignificant threat that would soon be dealt with. They believed that the Empire's military superiority was unmatched, and that no force, human or otherwise, could possibly stand against it. Yet there were others in the Empire, the ones who saw the patterns, who began to worry. They could feel something changing in the air, a shift that couldn't be ignored. Their calculations showed that something was coming, and they couldn't afford to be unprepared. As these rumors continued to spread, a few within the Empire's highest ranks began to take them seriously. A small group of Imperial commanders met in secret, discussing the possibility of a threat that could tear down everything they had built. The discussions were hushed and cautious, but the fear was real. The Empire, for the first time in its history, was beginning to face uncertainty. The whispers were no longer just stories. They were a warning. And the human fleet was not a myth. It was real, and it was coming for them. The rumors that had once been dismissed as fantasy soon became undeniable reality when the first human warship appeared in the Empire's space. It was unlike anything the Empire had ever seen. The ship was sleek, its design unfamiliar and haunting in its simplicity. It moved with terrifying speed, cutting through the cold void of space as if it were a predator hunting its prey. Imperial sensors scrambled to make sense of it, but the technology used by the human ship was beyond their comprehension. No one could trace its origins, and the ship itself appeared to be invisible to standard detection systems. It was as though the ship had mastered space itself, slipping through it as though it had no boundaries. At first, the Empire's military command treated it as a curiosity, something that might have slipped through a tear in space or a glitch in their surveillance. They had seen strange things before, after all. But as the ship moved deeper into Imperial space, destroying entire outposts without warning, the mood shifted from disbelief to panic. Imperial warships were dispatched, but they could not keep up. The human ship engaged in combat with a precision that defied all Imperial tactics, striking with calculated force, and then vanishing into the dark again before reinforcements could arrive. One by one, Imperial patrols were wiped out, their ships reduced to flaming wrecks. As days passed, more ships appeared. They didn't come in a single wave but arrived in small, coordinated fleets, each more devastating than the last. The human ships moved as a unit, their precision terrifying, almost surgical in their attacks. Where the Empire relied on overwhelming numbers, the humans fought with a deadly efficiency that no one had expected. The human warships weren't just powerful, they were unpredictable. Their tactics kept the Empire's best strategists guessing, leaving them struggling to come up with a countermeasure that could prevent further destruction. Reports came in from all over the galaxy as Imperial colonies and military outposts fell one after another. What was once seen as a distant threat was now at the Empire's doorstep, and the first signs of real fear began to spread through Imperial command. The Empire had long been invincible, its military might unmatched, but this new enemy did not fight like any they had faced before. It was as though they were always one step ahead, always prepared, and always striking where the Empire least expected it. The Emperor's advisors were summoned in haste. In the grand war rooms of the Imperial Palace, plans were drawn and strategies were devised. The Emperor, however, remained calm, convinced that this would be nothing more than a fleeting disturbance. But even as he spoke with confidence, doubt began to settle in his heart. He had never seen anything like this before. The human fleet was not just another enemy to be crushed. It was something far more dangerous. There was a fierceness in their attack, a fire in their will that the Empire had never encountered. The human ships, while small in number compared to the Empire's massive fleets, were ruthless in their efficiency. Each attack felt like a surgical strike, targeting only what needed to be destroyed and leaving the rest intact. As the weeks passed, entire Imperial fleets vanished without a trace, their destruction swift and complete. The once unshakable Empire, with its advanced technology and seemingly limitless resources, was now on the defensive. The humans had shown them what true warfare was like, relentless, unyielding, and with a spirit that refused to be broken. The war was no longer a distant possibility. It was happening now. And the humans were winning. The Empire's leadership could no longer ignore the truth. What had begun as a series of isolated incidents quickly escalated into a full-scale crisis. The human fleet, which had once been a rumor whispered in corners of the galaxy, was now a force of nature. It was everywhere. It was unstoppable. And the Emperor, for the first time in his reign, found himself caught off guard. His once unquestionable authority was now challenged by a threat he could not understand. In the grand halls of the Imperial Palace, a tense silence filled the air as the Emperor's most trusted advisors gathered to discuss the situation. The reports were bleak. Imperial warships, once proud symbols of the Empire's strength, were being destroyed with ease. Outposts and colonies, strategically placed throughout the galaxy, were falling one by one. Entire sectors were in chaos, and the Empire, which had crushed rebellions with such finality in the past, was now helpless against these mysterious invaders. The Emperor's most brilliant tacticians, generals and admirals, who had long been the architects of the Empire's triumphs, were at a loss. They had never encountered an enemy like this. The human ships were unlike any the Empire had ever seen. They moved faster, fought harder, and seemed to predict every countermeasure the Empire could throw at them. Their tactics were a blend of precision and chaos, making them unpredictable and dangerous. No one knew where they would strike next, and no one knew how to stop them. The Emperor's advisors suggested a variety of responses, deploying the Imperial fleet's full strength, calling in reinforcements from distant star systems, even deploying weapons of mass destruction. But each suggestion was met with the same cold response from the Emperor. He refused to believe that the Empire, the greatest force the galaxy had ever known, could be defeated by a handful of unknown invaders. He would not bow to them. He would not surrender. And yet the cracks in his resolve began to show. The human fleet's strikes were calculated, precise, and relentless. Each engagement left the Empire weaker than before, and every victory for the humans chipped away at the Emperor's confidence. For the first time, he found himself questioning the Empire's invincibility. He had ruled for so long with absolute power, but now, this force of humans, unknown and untamed, was threatening to tear down everything he had built. In desperation, the Emperor ordered a meeting with his top commanders. They would discuss the human threat in person, face to face, and they would find a solution. The atmosphere in the room was thick with tension. The Emperor's closest military minds were nervous, their once unshakable confidence shattered. There was no easy answer. The human fleet was too unpredictable, too skilled, and too determined. And with each passing day, the Empire's powers seemed to erode. One commander, An old veteran who had fought in the Empire's greatest battles finally spoke. His voice was calm, but it carried a weight of experience. "Your Majesty," he said, "the time for denial has passed. These humans are no mere rebels. They are a force that cannot be underestimated. We can no longer rely on our old strategies to defeat them. We need something new. We need to understand how they think, how they fight. Only then can we hope to defeat them." The Emperor stared at the commander, his eyes filled with frustration and fear. "Do you think I don't know that?" He snapped. "We will crush them. I won't allow the Empire to fall." But deep down, the Emperor knew. His invincible empire, the one he had ruled with such absolute power, was crumbling. And the humans were not the only threat. The true danger lay in the realization that the Empire's reign could be over, and nothing could stop it now. The tension in the Empire reached a boiling point as the inevitable confrontation with the human fleet loomed ever closer. The Emperor, despite his growing doubts, refused to acknowledge that his once mighty empire could be defeated. Instead, he placed his trust in his best commanders, believing that with overwhelming force, the human fleet could be crushed. The Empire's greatest warships were mobilized, and the Emperor's forces prepared for battle with a sense of urgency they had never felt before. It was no longer a matter of conquest, it was a matter of survival. The human fleet, on the other hand, was calm. They had no illusions of victory being handed to them. They knew that the Empire would not go down without a fight, but their strategy had always been to strike swiftly, unpredictably, and with overwhelming force. They were not seeking total annihilation, not yet, but rather to prove that the Empire's rule had come to an end. It was not a war of numbers. It was a war of will, of proving that the Empire's grip on the galaxy was no longer unbreakable. As the human fleet made its way toward the Imperial stronghold, the Empire's forces gathered in full force, ready for what they believed would be their greatest triumph. The battle began just beyond the outer reaches of Imperial space, where the two forces collided in a storm of fire and fury. The Empire's warships, massive and imposing, unleashed waves of energy, their weapons bright against the cold darkness of space. The human fleet responded with incredible speed, weaving in and out of the chaos with ease, using their agility to avoid the brunt of the Empire's fire. Their warships moved as if they were alive, dodging beams and missiles with unnatural precision. In the heart of the battle, it became clear that the Empire's traditional tactics were no match for the human fleet's unpredictable style. The Empire's commanders barked orders, trying to reorganize their forces, but the humans adapted too quickly. Every maneuver the Empire made seemed to be countered before it could even take effect. The human fleet wasn't fighting to win. They were fighting to show the Empire that their power was no longer absolute. They didn't need to destroy everything. They only needed to show their superiority. At the forefront of the battle, the flagship of the Empire's fleet, a towering warship larger than anything the humans had ever seen, unleashed its full weaponry. It fired wave after wave of destructive blasts, intent on crushing the human fleet once and for all. But the human ships darted in, attacking the Empire's weaknesses. They didn't strike directly at the warship's shields, but instead focused on its weapon systems, its engines, its vulnerabilities. The human fleet's strategy was as simple as it was devastating: cripple the enemy's ability to fight back. As the battle raged on, the human fleet began to inflict serious damage. An entire division of Imperial warships was wiped out in mere minutes, their massive ships torn apart by the precise strikes of the human ships. The human fleet, though smaller in number, displayed an uncanny ability to work as a single unit, their coordination flawless despite their technological differences. The Empire's forces, which had once seemed unbeatable, were beginning to falter. The tide of the battle shifted when a small group of human warships infiltrated the heart of the Imperial fleet. They bypassed the outer defenses and targeted the Empire's command center. In a matter of moments, the heart of the Imperial strategy was destroyed. The commanders on board, once considered untouchable, were dead, and the Empire's coordination began to break down. The human fleet had not only defeated them in battle, but had dismantled the Empire's leadership in one decisive move. As the last Imperial warship fell, the remaining forces retreated in disarray, leaving the human fleet victorious. The once proud Empire had suffered its first real defeat, and the galaxy was left to wonder how much longer the Emperor's rule could last. The humans had shown that they could fight, and they had shown that the Empire's time had finally come to an end. The victory of the human fleet over the mighty Empire sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. What had seemed impossible was now a reality. The Empire, once unchallenged, was vulnerable. The human fleet had proven that they could stand against the might of the Emperor's forces and win. The news spread quickly, igniting a spark of hope among the oppressed peoples of the galaxy. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy's inhabitants began to believe that they could be free from the Empire's iron grip. The human fleet had given them a glimpse of what was possible. But with that hope came the realization that a long and brutal war lay ahead. In the wake of the human fleet's victory, resistance movements that had long been crushed under the weight of Imperial rule began to stir. The galaxy's rebels, once scattered and defeated, began to unite. They saw the humans not just as a threat to the Empire, but as a symbol of rebellion itself. The time had come for them to rise up, to fight back against the Empire and reclaim their freedom. The humans, though victorious, did not take their success for granted. They understood that this was only the beginning. The Empire, though shaken, was not yet defeated. The Emperor would not sit idle while his power was challenged. He would regroup, reorganize, and strike back with everything he had. The human fleet knew that their victory had been hard-earned, but it was only a small step in a much larger struggle. In secret meetings held on distant worlds, the leaders of the galaxy's resistance movements gathered. They spoke of the future, of a galaxy freed from the Empire's tyranny. The humans, they agreed, would be their allies in this fight. The resistance needed their strength, their technology, and their unyielding will to win. The humans had proven themselves capable of standing up to the Empire. And now, together, the resistance and the humans would take the fight to the heart of the Empire itself. But not all were convinced that this new alliance would be enough. There were those in the resistance who feared that the humans were too unpredictable, too different to trust. The humans fought with a ferocity that the galaxy had never seen before, but their methods were not like those of the rebels. They were tactical, efficient, but also ruthless. Some feared that in their pursuit of victory, the humans would become just as oppressive as the Empire they sought to overthrow. Despite these concerns, the alliance between the humans and the resistance held strong. The human fleet continued to strike at the Empire's vulnerable points, crippling supply lines, destroying key outposts, and cutting off reinforcements. With each victory, the Empire's grip on the galaxy weakened, and more systems began to rise up in rebellion. The human fleet, now seen as a symbol of hope, led the charge. And with them, the galaxy's resistance movements gained strength and momentum. As the war raged on, the human fleet remained relentless. They pushed deeper into Imperial space, and with each passing day, the Emperor's forces found themselves on the defensive. The Empire, once the unquestioned ruler of the stars, was now a fractured and vulnerable entity. The humans, driven by a singular purpose, had shown the galaxy that even the most powerful empire could fall. And as the resistance forces joined their cause, it became clear that the human fleet was not just fighting for survival. They were fighting to reshape the galaxy. As the human fleet continued its relentless campaign against the Empire, the once proud Emperor found himself backed into a corner. The victories of the human forces were piling up, and the rebellion had spread like wildfire. More systems defected from the Empire every day, joining the resistance or simply disappearing into the vast reaches of space to avoid Imperial wrath. What had once been an unstoppable force now seemed fractured, with cracks appearing in its very foundation. The emperor, who had ruled with absolute authority for so long, could feel the walls closing in on him. Inside his grand palace, he brooded over the news of his forces' repeated failures. His most trusted advisors, the generals and admirals who had served him faithfully for years, were now either dead or in full retreat. The fleet that had once been a symbol of unmatched power was crumbling. The human fleet, with their unmatched tactics and relentless spirit, had torn apart everything the Empire had built. The Emperor had made countless plans, but they all seemed to fail when faced with this unpredictable new enemy. Desperation began to take root in his heart. If the Empire was to survive, he had to act decisively. He could not afford any more losses. In the dark chambers of the Imperial war rooms, the Emperor issued his most final and desperate command. He would gather what remained of his forces, the last bastions of his military might, and make one final stand. This would be their last chance to crush the human threat and restore the Empire's dominance. He knew the odds were slim, but his pride would not allow him to bow to defeat. The humans had shown that they could defeat him, but the Emperor had one last card to play. The final battle would take place at the heart of the Empire, the Imperial capital, a fortress world surrounded by the most advanced defense systems in the galaxy. If the human fleet could break through, it would not only mark the fall of the Empire, but the beginning of a new era. The Emperor believed that he could win this battle. He believed that with the full might of his remaining forces, he could wipe out the humans once and for all. The human fleet, aware of the Emperor's movements, began to prepare for what they knew would be the most decisive conflict of the war. The humans had no illusions of an easy victory. The Emperor would stop at nothing to protect his rule, and this final battle would likely be the bloodiest of all. But they also knew that this was the moment they had been waiting for. If they could defeat the Emperor here, the galaxy would be free. As the human fleet gathered on the edge of Imperial space, the tension was palpable. The stakes had never been higher. The Emperor's forces were formidable, but the humans had something the Empire could not match: the will to fight for something greater than themselves. The Empire's soldiers fought for a dying empire, but the humans fought for the future, a future where the galaxy would no longer be ruled by fear and oppression. The final battle was fast approaching, and the galaxy held its breath. This would be the endgame, the ultimate showdown that would determine the fate of the entire galaxy. Would the human fleet emerge victorious and reshape the future of the stars, or would the Emperor's forces prove that even in the face of overwhelming odds, the Empire's power was still unbreakable? The answer would be found on the battlefield. The battle that everyone had been waiting for finally began with a violent explosion of fire and fury as the human fleet clashed with the last remnants of the Emperor's once unbreakable forces. Imperial ships, massive and imposing, moved into position around the capital world, their weaponry primed for a decisive strike. On the other side, the human fleet, smaller in number but no less determined, took up formation with calm precision, their ships ready for the final push. The stakes had never been higher, and the tension in space was unbearable. The Emperor, standing at the heart of his fortress, watched the battle unfold through the flickering images on the command center screens. His heart raced with a mixture of fury and fear. This was it, his last chance to preserve his empire. His forces were on the front lines, but he knew, deep down, that this battle would define everything. If the humans could break through, they would not just defeat the Empire, they would end it forever. The clash was cataclysmic. The human fleet moved like a shadow, appearing and disappearing in the blink of an eye, striking with deadly accuracy before vanishing again into the dark void. The Empire's ships, massive and slow in comparison, struggled to keep up. Their weapons fired in waves, but the human fleet, agile and precise, avoided the brunt of the fire. The Imperial forces, once proud ships, designed to dominate the galaxy, were now outmatched by a new force, a force born of necessity, unity, and a burning desire for freedom. As the battle raged on, the human fleet's strategy began to show its devastating effect. They targeted the Empire's weak points, supply lines, communication hubs, and defense systems, systematically crippling the Imperial forces. The Empire's warships, once invincible, were now falling apart piece by piece. The Emperor's forces fought fiercely, but they were no match for the coordination and ferocity of the human fleet. Every attack they launched was countered before they could even get in position, and one by one, the Empire's ships were destroyed. The turning point came when the human fleet managed to break through the heavily defended outer rings of the Imperial capital. With shocking speed, they breached the capital's defenses, forcing the Empire's last line of defense to retreat in chaos. Inside the fortress, the Emperor's final command came down with all the weight of his shattered pride. He had one final weapon, an experimental device capable of wiping out everything within the capital's atmosphere, including himself. If he couldn't win, he would take the galaxy down with him. But the humans were ready. They had anticipated his desperation and had already made their move. A small group of human warships infiltrated the heart of the Imperial capital, targeting the device before it could activate. In the blink of an eye, the device was disabled, and the Emperor's last desperate hope for victory crumbled. The Emperor watched, helpless, as the Imperial forces were dismantled. His empire was slipping through his fingers. The final wave of human warships arrived, and with it, the last remnants of his reign were obliterated. The Emperor, for all his power, was powerless now. He had tried to hold on, but the humans were too much, too relentless, too determined. In the aftermath, the galaxy watched as the Empire's great capital fell. The Emperor's reign came to an end, not with a final triumph, but with the quiet and inevitable collapse of a crumbling empire. The human fleet, victorious at last, stood as the symbol of a new age. A new era had dawned. No longer would the galaxy tremble under the weight of fear and oppression. The human fleet had proven that with unity, willpower, and an unyielding belief in freedom, even the mightiest of empires could be toppled. And so, the empire fell. And with it, a new future was born, one where the galaxy was no longer ruled by tyranny, but by the hope and promise of freedom. The humans had shown the galaxy that even the darkest nights could be overcome with light, and that no empire, no matter how vast or powerful, could ever truly last forever.